The night clung to Ashwood Forest like a shroud. No moon dared pierce the tangled canopy above. Twisted branches, gnarled and ancient, clawed at the night sky. They were like skeletal fingers reaching out to grasp at the shadows themselves. The air hung still and silent. It was a silence that felt alive, pregnant with unseen terrors. A low mist, cold and damp, snaked its way through the undergrowth, carrying with it the scent of decay. Ashwood had always held an unsettling presence. Its beauty was a cruel facade, a mask hiding a sinister truth. The villagers whispered tales of the forest. They spoke of things heard and seen, things that defied explanation. Their voices were hushed, fearful. They knew the secrets that Ashwood held. They knew the darkness that thrived within its depths. The forest was a place of shadows and whispers. It was a place where the veil between this world and the next felt thin. Those who dared to enter its depths often returned changed. Their eyes held a haunted look, their faces etched with a terror they could never quite articulate. Some never returned at all. Centuries ago, a woman named Morwen lived at the edge of the woods. She was an outcast, a woman feared and shunned by the villagers. They called her a witch. They whispered of strange potions and muttered incantations. They accused her of communing with dark forces. But Morwen was no malevolent being. She was a healer, a woman who understood the secrets of the natural world. She used her knowledge to help those in need, tending to the sick and injured. Her only companions were the creatures of the forest. She spoke to the owls and the deer. She understood the language of the trees. The forest was her sanctuary, her solace. But the villagers' fear festered and grew. They saw her connection to the forest as proof of her wickedness. They stormed her humble dwelling one night, torches held high. They dragged her to the heart of the woods, their faces contorted with hate and fear. They bound her to an ancient oak, its branches twisted and gnarled. They set fire to the base of the tree, the flames licking at the dry wood. As the fire roared around her, Morwen cursed the villagers. She cursed them and their descendants. She cursed the very land they lived on. Her voice, filled with rage and despair, echoed through the trees. Her words were carried on the wind, seeping into the soil, into the very fabric of Ashwood. The villagers of Oakhaven, the small hamlet nestled uncomfortably close to Ashwood, knew the stories. They were passed down through generations, whispered warnings about the dangers that lurked within the forest. The stories spoke of strange lights seen moving through the trees at night. They spoke of disembodied voices, whispering names on the wind. They spoke of a feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes tracking your every move. Some dismissed these tales as mere superstition, the ramblings of frightened villagers. But others knew better. They had seen things in Ashwood, things they couldn't explain, things that chilled them to the bone. There was Old Man Hemlock, who claimed to have seen a figure hanging from one of the trees. He said it was a woman, her long black hair obscuring her face. He said her eyes glowed red in the darkness. No one believed him, of course. They said his mind was addled, his memories muddled by age. Then there was young Sarah, who had wandered too close to the forest edge one evening. She came back babbling about a beautiful woman with eyes like emeralds. Sarah's parents dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination, but Sarah insisted it was real. The disappearances started small. A farmer returning home late one night took a shortcut through the edge of Ashwood. He was never seen again. A young boy, playing too close to the tree line, vanished without a trace. His heartbroken parents searched for days, but found no sign of him. At first, the villagers blamed these tragedies on wild animals, or perhaps bandits hiding out in the dense undergrowth. But as the disappearances continued, a more sinister explanation began to take root. The villagers whispered of the witch's curse. They said Morwen's vengeful spirit haunted the woods, claiming victims as payment for her suffering. Fear gripped Oakhaven. Parents forbade their children from even approaching the forest. Travellers took long detours, avoiding Ashwood at all costs. The forest stood silent, a brooding presence overlooking the village. It was as if it relished the fear it inspired. One crisp autumn evening, a young woman named Ilara went missing. She'd been gathering herbs near the forest's edge, her basket brimming with chamomile and lavender. When she didn't return by nightfall, a search party was organised. They scoured the woods all night, their torches casting flickering shadows amongst the trees. They called Ilara's name until their voices were hoarse, but there was no answer, only the mournful sigh of the wind through the trees. The search for Ilara continued for weeks, but to no avail. The villagers combed through the dense undergrowth, their hope dwindling with each passing day. The forest seemed to mock their efforts, swallowing their calls for Ilara whole. They found no trace of her, no sign of a struggle, no shred of clothing, not even a single footprint. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. As the days turned into weeks, the villagers of Oakhaven were forced to accept a grim reality. Ilara was gone, lost to the forest, just like all the others. A pall of grief and fear settled over the village. The once vibrant heart of Oakhaven seemed to dim, as if the life itself was being leached from it. The villagers whispered of the witch's curse. They said Morwen's wrath knew no bounds. They said Ashwood would never release its hold on them. The disappearances continued, though less frequently now. Each one served as a chilling reminder of the ever-present danger that lurked just beyond their doorstep. Tales of Ashwood's haunting grew more frequent, more outlandish, more terrifying. The line between fact and fiction blurred, lost in the swirling mists of fear and superstition that clung to the forest like a shroud. It seemed that every villager had a story, a personal encounter with the supernatural that left them shaken and afraid. There were whispers of phantom lights that danced through the trees at night, beckoning travellers deeper into the woods. Some claimed to have seen the ghostly apparition of Morwen herself, her eyes burning with an eerie green fire. One particularly chilling tale involved a group of young men who dared each other to spend a night in Ashwood. They were determined to prove their bravery, to debunk the myths that had haunted their childhoods. They ventured into the forest, their laughter and bravado echoing through the silent trees. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped. A thick fog rolled in, blanketing the forest in an eerie silence. The young men grew quiet, their earlier confidence replaced by a growing sense of unease. They huddled around a crackling fire, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. The shadows from the surrounding trees seemed to stretch and writhe, taking on menacing forms. Then the whispers started, soft at first, barely audible above the crackling fire. But they grew louder, more insistent. The young men glanced nervously at each other, their hearts pounding in their chests. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. One of the young men scrambled back from the fire, his eyes wide with terror. He pointed a trembling finger towards the darkness beyond the firelight. "I saw her," he stammered, his voice hoarse with fear. "I saw the witch." The other young men followed his gaze, their blood running cold. There, standing at the edge of the firelight, was a figure. It was tall and slender, shrouded in a long flowing cloak. Panic seized the young men. They scrambled to their feet, scattering in different directions. The figure in the darkness made no move to follow them. It simply stood there, its glowing eyes watching them flee. The young men didn't stop running until they burst out of the tree line, gasping for breath, their clothes torn and their faces streaked with sweat and fear. They never spoke of what they had seen that night, but the memory of it and the chilling certainty that they had looked upon the face of evil haunted them for the rest of their days. The tale of the young men and their encounter with the witch spread through Oakhaven like wildfire. It served as a stark warning to those who dared to doubt the reality of Ashwood's curse. The forest had claimed countless victims over the centuries, and it showed no signs of relenting. The villagers were trapped, living in the shadow of a malevolent force they could neither understand nor control. But even in the darkest of times, hope can flicker like a candle in the wind. There were those in Oakhaven who refused to give in to fear. They clung to the belief that there had to be a way to break the curse, to lift the shadow that hung over their lives. They remembered a time before Ashwood had become synonymous with fear and despair.